Namaste students, welcome to English class. I hope every one of you is safe at your home. The last week's video lecture, you learned the poem Macavity the Mystery Cat. The poem was written by T.S. Eliot. The poem describes a cat named Macavity. His activities and appearances has been described in that poem. For this week's video lecture, we have two chapters. One from your supplementary reader book, It So Happened, and another from your grammar book. The third lesson in your supplementary reader book is The Selfish Giant. This story, The Selfish Giant, is written by Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde was an Irish author. He lived from 1854 to 9. He died at a very young age of 46. Victorian era. During his lifetime, he wrote 9 plays, novels, and numerous poems, short stories, and essays. From his collection of short stories for children, this lesson, the Selfish, has been taken. This is a very simple story. It is very easy to follow because it has very few characters. And the giant has no name. He is just a symbolic representation of all the selfish people. The people who don't think about other people and just keep on building their wealth. As we have done in the other videos, the story will be narrated to you with picture illustrations, and you should read the story on your textbook. For those who don't have the textbook, I will give you a PDF file of this lesson so that you can read it on your mobile phone. Now let's start the story. Every evening after the school gets over, the children at the village came to play at the giant's garden. They had a great time and told one another how happy we are at this garden. The garden was a beautiful one with 12 peach trees which blossomed in the spring and bore fruits in the autumn. The birds sang so sweet, the children stopped playing and listened to it. The garden's owner, the giant, had been away for 7 years. He went to visit his friend Cornish Ogre, and he has been staying there for 7 years. And after 7 long years, he said goodbye to his friend and returned to his castle. Upon his arrival, he saw the children playing in his garden, and he was shocked to see it. He asked, "Who are you, and what are you doing in my garden?" He asked in a very rough voice. The children were frightened at this monstrous giant, and they ran away from that place. He said, "My own garden is my own garden. I am the only one who should play in it." So he decided to build a wall around the garden. He built a huge wall around the garden and hung up a signboard that says, "Trespassers will be prosecuted." Now the children had nowhere to play. He was a very selfish giant. The children who had been playing inside the garden had nowhere to play now. They tried to play on the road, but it was dirty and full of hard stones. They wandered around the high wall and sighed how happy we were inside that garden. But now we are stranded on the road. And then the spring came, and all over the country there was little blossoms, and birds began to sing. But only in the giant's garden it was still winter. The birds did not sing, the trees did not blossom, as there were no children in the garden. The people who were happy were the snow and the frost. They said, "Spring has forgotten this garden. so we will stay here for a whole year. The snow covered the grass with her blanket, and the frost painted every tree silver. Now you can see snow and frost has been personified here. And they invited North Wind to stay in that place. The North Wind is a harsh, cold wind. He blew the chimney pots down on the giant's castle. He liked that place very much, so he invited hail. Hail is the ice that pours in the winter season. Hail rattled on the roof till he broke most of the slates on the giant's castle. The giant wondered at the absence of spring. As he looked at the garden, he saw white snow cover his garden. He hoped for a change in weather, but spring never came, nor did the summer. And it was autumn season everywhere else in the country. The autumn gave fruits to every other garden, but did not want to enter the giant's garden. As the giant was too selfish, so the giant's garden was always winter. And one morning, the giant heard some lovely music, which he thought was the king's musicians passing by. But actually, it was a little linnet bird which was singing. It has been so long since any bird sang in his place. So it seemed to be the most wonderful music to him. The hail and the north wind stopped dancing, and a delicious fragrance came to him. He said to himself, spring came at last. Now he looked out to see a most wonderful sight, because through a little hole in the wall the children came in and played in the garden. The trees were so glad at their arrival, they blossomed and waving their arms to them. It was lovely to see the birds chirping and the children playing once again in the garden. But in one corner it was still winter. There he saw a little boy who could not climb up the tree because he was so small. That only tree was still covered with snow because there was no child on it. The giant's heart melted as he looked at that boy. He said to himself, how selfish I have been. Now he realizes why the spring did not come. I will put the little boy on the tree and I will knock down the wall so that it will be the playground for children forever and ever. He was really sorry for what he had done. The giant came down the garden and the children ran away as he walked down. And the giant garden became winter once again as the children left the garden. The children, the giant came near the little boy. The boy did not see the giant. He came near the little boy and took him gently in his hand and put him on the tree. And the tree blossomed instantly. The child was so happy. He wrapped his arms around the giant's neck and kissed on his cheek. The giant felt very happy. The other children who ran away saw that through the hole and they realized the giant was not cruel or wicked anymore. So they came back inside the garden and the garden was spring blossoming once again. The giant said to the children, "It is your garden now. You can play as long as you want." And he took a big axe and knocked down the wall. And after that, it was a lovely sight to see the children playing in the garden. The giant also joined them and played with them. When the children came to say goodbye to the giant, he would ask, "Where is that little boy I put on the tree?" The children did not know the child. They only saw him on that day, and he never came back to that garden again. The giant felt very sad. He was very eager to see that boy. And many years went over. The giant was very old and weak, so he could not play with the children anymore. So he sat on a huge armchair and watched the children play. He said to himself, "I have so many beautiful flowers in my garden, but the children are the most beautiful flowers of all." And he would ask about the boy to the children. But the boy never came to his garden again. And the winter came to the garden, but the giant knows that it is the change of season. The spring will come back after some time. One winter morning, he looked out of his window and could not believe what he saw. He saw a most wonderful sight because everywhere else the place was covered with snow, but in one corner a tree was covered with blossoms and fruits. And underneath that tree he saw the little boy whom the giant loved the most. The boy was playing under the tree. He ran to the garden and saw the little boy. He became very angry when he saw the little boy's hand had prints of two nails on it, and he also saw two nail wounds on the feet of this child. He shouted, "Who dared to hurt you? Show me that man and I will kill him with my big sword." For that the child said, "No, these are wounds of love." The giant asked, "Who art thou?" Which means, "Who are you?" And a strange feeling fell on him, and he knelt before the little child. The child smiled at the giant and said, "You let me play once in your garden. Today you shall come with me to my garden, which is paradise." So the Lord Christ himself has came down to the giant's garden and changed his heart. And when the children came to the garden that afternoon, they found the giant lying dead under the tree with his body covered with white blossoms. With that, the story comes to an end. Let's analyze the themes present in this story. It has the theme of loneliness because even though the giant had a huge castle and garden, he felt lonely because he had no human connection until he let the children play at his garden. So we learned that being wealthy does not make someone happy. It is people who really care about you that make you happy. And it has the theme of redemption. Redemption is realizing your mistakes and turning to do good. So once the giant realized his mistake of not allowing the children to play in his garden, he has knocked down the wall and done a very good thing. and it has the theme of salvation too. Salvation is turning to God's way and attaining eternal peace. So when the was giant was dead, he was surrounded by people who loved him. So he attained eternal peace. Now with that we have to the end of the story. You should read the story in your textbook so that you can correlate the observations you made in this video